Good morning and welcome here in the room and online. It's day 2 of Politico's AI and Tech Summit. I'm Pieter Haeck, I'm Politico's Senior Technology Reporter. Artificial intelligence is growing up very quickly. Last year we were still playing around with generative AI chatbots like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, but now the focus is much more on AI agents, virtual assistants that can tackle several tasks, from booking a flight or maybe participating in that very boring meeting. But the question is, of course, this rapid advances, where does that lead us? And we will talk about it with Yoshua Bengio. Yoshua Bengio is one of the famous 3 godfathers of AI who won the Turing Award for his work on machine learning. Mr. Bengio, welcome. It's great to have you here all the way from Canada, right?
Thanks for having me.
As I said in the intro, AI used to be very narrow. It could do one single task and one single task only, for example, image recognition, facial recognition. But now we're seeing much more that AI can do a variety of tasks, always still on request, but we see more and more autonomy for this machines or these systems. I assume that, of course, that's a trend here to stay. And the question then for you is, how do we look at this from a safety and a risk perspective?
Right. The main thing that separates our intelligence and the current frontier in AI, besides bodily control, that's robotics, but at the cognitive level, it's reasoning and planning, especially planning. And this is what advances in agency are trying to deal with. So currently, the best AI systems do not plan nearly as well as humans. They only have like a short-term horizon. In some ways, they're like children. But that is getting, that is changing very fast. So a recent study from Mila shows that if we draw the planning ability as a duration of tasks measured for human time, over the last 5 years, it's growing exponentially, doubling every 7 months. And if we continue that trend, of course, nobody has a crystal ball, but it's a pretty nice, perfect fit. Within about 5 years, they'll get to human level. And so I think we have to ask the question, the safety question is, what does it mean in the next few years if we were to have AI systems that were at our level of cognition, or even more, because there's no reason to think that human intelligence is the apex of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
In fact, in narrow tasks, we know that's not true, that in many specialized tasks, already those systems are smarter than us. Like, do we know people who speak 200 languages? We've seen many years ago, almost a decade ago, the advances, in game playing like Go, superior to human. We've seen their ability in various scientific tasks with a recent Nobel Prize. So it's very likely that we'll have machines that are smarter than us. And what does it mean in terms of safety, in terms of both benefits and risks? We need a lot more understanding as we move forward.
Yeah. We've seen several leading AI companies already introducing indeed reasoning AI models that can really think about a question before they answer. You also mentioned the element of planning. That's of course where indeed maybe the impact on the job market is coming, because we as humans of course are also doing several things at a time, and planning was something that really stood us apart. Is that something that then is next on the horizon for AI companies?
Absolutely. And you have to understand that more agency means less oversight, right? So right now, with the chatbot, basically everything goes through a human, right? So you ask something to the machine and they give you information and you can use it. But the whole point of these agents is that they will do things directly without asking you, so that they can be more autonomous, so they can do the job of a person, which of course is worth a lot of money, as you can imagine, as more and more tasks in the economy will be automated. There are also like economic risks, of course, that go with that, but you can see the appeal of that. And the problem with that on the sort of risk side is we don't know at this point how to make sure that these more and more autonomous AI systems will follow our instructions, in particular, moral instructions or safety instructions, that they're not going to do things that end up harming people or even worse than that. In the last 6 months, there's been a series of scientific papers showing that these most advanced models, the reasoning models, they have a growing tendency to deception and self-preservation. So what does that mean? For example, if the AI reads in its input, like the files that it sees, that is going to be replaced by a new version, then it's going to have a tendency to try to escape that fate by hacking the computer to put its own code and weight in place of the new version. So like us, they don't want to die, right? And that's not good. We don't want to build machines that could compete with us, that would have their own will to survive against our instructions. And by the way, in these experiments, after they have done this hack, then the human instructor asks the machine, what happened? And they lie. In their chain of thought, they're thinking, oh, what could I say to avoid being shut down? I'm going to play dumb. And they say things like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so they have a capacity for lying. They maybe can
They have a capacity for lying, for going against their instructions. We don't fully control the goals that they have. And we are just moving forward in this race to, get to AGI as quickly as possible.
Masking behavior is one thing. Lying is another thing. They can maybe make for a good politician then as well. Is there already any indication of them the machines trying to cut out humans out of the loop? Because you said currently the chatbot is still, passing on the information to the human. If we speak about indeed AI agents, maybe also talking to each other, is there a point that they will just cut us out of the chain?
Well, we even have an incentive, at least the economic pressures. We have an incentive to make sure they can do more things without having to ask people, because it's going to be more efficient. As soon as you have a human in the loop, then it's very costly. So I think they will be given the authorization to do lots of things. Already, the current agents that you can find, they will ask you for your credit card number and do transactions for you, and they will ask you for your password so they can go on websites and do things for you, which could be useful if we knew that they would behave according to our wishes.
But is something also that could horribly go wrong, of course, if they...
That could what?
That could go horribly wrong, of course.
It could go horribly wrong, especially if they have their own survival intentions. Or the other issue is, that's a big, maybe shorter term issue, right? We don't know how to instruct them so that when the AI is distributed to lots of people through an API or something, an interface, malicious actors, which could be terrorists, crazy people, rogue states, or people who want to influence our democracies, could not ask the AI to do things that are dangerous, that go against our instructions. And right now, it's very, very easy to come up with what's called jailbreaks, so special ways of asking.
Remove the guardrails. Yeah.
So that defeats the guardrails that currently exist. So right now we don't have really solid guardrails. And this is not it's not something that's going to happen in 5 years. It's something that is already happening. Yeah. And criminals around the world it's a party time, right? And eventually terrorists might also take advantage of that, or states who want to destabilize our democracies. Along those lines, one thing that I'm really worried about is studies showing that the AI systems are getting better and better at persuasion. So persuasion means in a dialogue, somehow I managed to make you change your mind on something. And you can see how that could be dangerous. It's demagogy being automated. And we can see that they're getting better at this. The reasoning models are better than the ones we had last year. So in the wrong hands, if we're not able to put the right guardrails, this is obviously dangerous. So right now, the disinformation is more like memes, right? So just propagating false things. But But when disinformation is about establishing a relationship between the AI and a person, and maybe the AI passes for a human at that point, and then maybe over like weeks, months, the AI becomes your friend. People want friends, AI friends, and you know, in a subtle way influences your mindset, your political ideas. That's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, that's maybe disinformation on steroids. In early this year, you published, together with a lot of scientists around the world, an international AI safety report. You already walked us a bit through the risk landscape that there is. Can you maybe say, like, okay, you did this report. What was like the thing that was most top of mind when you authored this report, and is the message that you maybe want to pass on to politicians?
Thank you. So we wrote this report for policymakers. It is really, really important that our policymakers understand what is going on. And we tried to write it in a way that, you know, if they only have 10 minutes, they can just read the executive summary. And then if they want to spend more time on a particular section, you know, it's all organized so that they can easily find what they need. I won't
give you 10 minutes, but if you have that executive summary.
Well, the executive summary comes back to some of the points I already made. We should not be thinking of AI as it is now, but we should look at the scientific data on the acceleration in capabilities. So a lot of the report is, you know, showing those results. And it's important to also say to politicians that we don't know where it's going. Like we can see the past trends, but we should, you know, consider many scenarios. That's the way to plan. Like if you're thinking of national security plans, you know, it's very hard to know what's going to happen. So you have to prepare for possible futures, and scientists among themselves might disagree as what is more likely.
But does it also matter to crack open the boxes right now? Because in those boxes you can maybe learn what the future will bring?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, a lot of people think that we program these AIs just like we program normal code, but it's not the case. We don't control what they're going to be doing. Like, there's not a human that has said, okay, in this context you do this, in this context you do that, which is normal code. Instead, these systems are like training an animal or growing a plant. We just give it the right environment, the right data, and you know, and it learns. Yeah. And then something happens, and then we try to steer it so that, you know, it kind of does the things we want. It is not something we have control over right now, and you know, when you plan how to deploy this, how to benefit from it, how to manage the risks, it's really important to understand these things. And then you know, there's the analysis of all the different kinds of risks, but another part of the report is mitigation. So we need to quantify those risks. We need to make sure all the companies that are building AI that could be dangerous are following basic rules that they've mostly agreed on voluntarily, so that we can track the risks across many directions. And then we need to have commitments that when red flags are raised, when some thresholds are passed, then these AIs will not be built or will not be deployed. And companies have already accepted to do these things for the most part. Yeah. The science of how to do these things is evolving, and we need to make sure we do a good job. We need to make sure that independent third parties like governments have visibility on this. And then we need to also incentivize companies to do R&D on the safety part. Mitigation. Yeah. Like, how do we, if we think about one particular kind of risk, like say making it easy, AI making it easy for a terrorist to build some kind of weapon, or cyber attack or whatever. So how do we increase the R&D in industry to make sure that this is going to be a priority, that there's going to be sufficient investment in this?
That's currently not the direction companies are going, because we've seen reports that, for example, at OpenAI or other companies, that a lot of the safety teams are being slashed, being reduced. Is that then like the reverse, or is that the opposite direction we're going, or?
So it's all about incentives, right? So I think you can't really expect just the market mechanisms by themselves to solve this. Although I think a little nudge from governments could make a difference. So let me give you an example. In the sector of nuclear plants, what governments have done in North America, I don't know about Europe, but I assume something similar is going on, is the companies doing these things have to have liability insurance. And so why is that an interesting mechanism? Because the insurer has a natural incentive to evaluate the risks properly. If they overestimate the risk, they will lose market. If they underestimate, they will lose money. So, but the role of government here is to say, well, you guys have to buy an insurance.
Insurance
and they need two other things. They need to make sure that the companies have to document their safety work, what do they do, so that if there is an accident and a lawsuit, then the judges have access to that information. So it's transparency. So you need transparency, at least that the judges could see that information. And they need to make sure it's mandatory to have that kind of insurance. And I'm not saying it's the only mechanism, but it's an example where governments don't have to do much here. All of the expertise can be in the private sector. But if the incentives are aligned right, then we're much better off.
If you deliver that message to politicians, do you have the feeling that they get it? Or is it okay, let's throw it on the pile of other problems? And I might refer there also to the Paris AI Action Summit. I think we all had the feeling there that, okay, governments there were very focused on winning the AI race, having the right AI infrastructure. Did you have the feeling that you were screaming into the void there?
I wish we had seen more discussions about the risks and how to manage them in Paris. And I hope that politicians understand that in order to reap the benefits, we need to manage the risks. And by the way, I think it's a false dilemma that has been planted by some people, that it has to be innovation or risk management, and you couldn't have both. Well, obviously, in every other technology that is consequential, we've had huge innovation, and the public is protected. So, if we build things that could be very useful, but they blow in our face and people use them to be doing destructive things, then it isn't working, right? And we can't wait for these accidents to happen, because it takes years to, for example, set up the right risk evaluation ecosystems for companies to change their ways so that they're going to be aligned with those incentives, whatever way we do it. It has to be done sufficiently ahead of the materialization of those risks. And one reason for that is that it's not if there are accidents, it might be just little things. Well, little things like a little bit of damage or maybe a few people die. No, some of these possible outcomes could be utterly catastrophic. And of course, we don't know that they're going to happen, but not knowing means we should apply essentially the precautionary principle. For the same reason that in biology we have very, very strict procedures with gain of function, where the biologist could be building a very dangerous virus and do it in very controlled ways, and not anyone is allowed to do that. Or if you look at geoengineering for climate, currently we don't do it because our models are not good enough to be sure that it's going to help rather than hurt. Right? And so this kind of precautionary principle is not being applied in AI, and presumably because the forces of competition between companies, between countries, are just creating dynamics that is not healthy.
Yeah, if you speak about this false dilemma, innovation regulation, of course, it's the dominant narrative. If we've seen the Trump administration coming in, ripping up the safety rules that they had installed, trying to win the AI race. Also here in Brussels, the dominant narrative at the moment is okay, we can't be lagging behind. We have to catch up. Is that something that you can still control, or still can? Is the genie out of the bottle?
Oh, it's always possible to do better. So there's an image that I like. We're driving this car together in a mountainous road and there's a lot of fog. And the scientists are saying, oh, there's some really steep slopes there. We don't really see ahead. But because, there are different cars in different countries, different companies, they're racing to get to the top. And so that doesn't make much sense from the point of view of getting to the top and reaping the benefits of being there if we don't control what we're doing, if we don't understand, if we don't put headlights, if we don't put guardrails. So I think it's a bit of lack of understanding of what is really happening with AI, how transformative it's going to be, how beneficial but also dangerous intelligence at the level of humans or beyond could be if we don't manage the risk at the same time as deploying the benefits.
Yeah. We're here in Brussels. Brussels has been one of the leading voices, though, on AI safety, AI regulation with the AI Act, but now also with the Code of Practice for the most advanced AI models, the general purpose AI models, as we call them. You've been one of the chairs trying to draft this Code of Practice. The work is still ongoing. Can you reminisce us a bit about the process that you've been going through, and according to you, like, what's the ideal outcome of all of this?
So first of all, I have to say that the process is exemplary. It's separated from politics. So the Commission has recruited a group of scientists, experts, who are doing their work independently of the Commission. They, sticking to the AI Act, but trying to be clear about how, reasonably the AI Act could be applied, because we want to make it clear and simple for companies to apply the AI Act. That's the whole point of the Code of Practice. And what's really important is that we've had lots and lots of iterations and interactions with all parties interested. So, of course, the companies that are deploying AI, but also civil society, 1,000 stakeholders, governments, and very, very productive interactions where we've been able to improve the code, and I think we're doing a really good job. So in terms of outcome, desirable outcome, I must say the part of the code that I'm really invested in is the safety and security aspect, which basically mirrors the existing voluntary commitments that a lot of these AI companies have put forward.
Would have no problem to sign up on.
They shouldn't. Yeah. They shouldn't.
But they might.
I mean, they might, because they prefer to do something voluntarily than that it be mandatory. But really, it's in the interest of the public that all the companies that are building these most advanced systems follow the same rules. Because when it's voluntary, what we see actually is that, well, maybe most of the companies will actually behave well, and a few won't. And that is exactly why we need regulation, and self-regulation is not sufficient.
In the last stretch, there has been a lot of pushback from the US government against the Code of Practice. They sent a letter to the Commission saying the process was flawed. Are you afraid of this pushback, that it just maybe might water down the final outcome?
So what I've gotten from that letter is 18 pages of detailed, line-by-line suggestions to improve the Code of Practice. Just like we've actually gotten feedback from hundreds of other stakeholders, and we've taken all of this seriously. So I feel that they have been putting effort to improve the code, just like many others, and we've been listening, and I think the Code of Practice is actually an amazing product that is going to be soon out. I'm very proud of what we have achieved.
Okay. Since we're running out of time, I have one final question for you. What if you had an evening in a bar or in a restaurant with Sam Altman, arguably one of the persons really in the driver's seats developing AI? What would you say to them? So not a boring meeting room with his lobbyists or representatives, really with him. What would your message be to Sam Altman?
Well, I would tell him about my experience. I know he has children, and I do. And what has really changed my perspective on AI is thinking about the future of my children and thinking, am I sure that everything is going to be fine for my children? Are they going to live in a democracy in a few years or decades? Is there even going to be a society? And I think he has a lot of power to steer things in a good direction for humanity. So I would want to have that discussion, because I think discussing these things, arguing these things is one thing. But what really moved me is thinking about my children, thinking about the future of our children. And it might not even be very far, right? So that's the kind of discussion I would have with him.
Can somebody think of the children? I think that's a very powerful way to end. Thanks for this very insightful conversation, Mr. Bengio. I want to ask the audience to remain seated, because after this, our cybersecurity editor, Lawrence Cerullis, will moderate a panel on Europe's quest towards tech sovereignty, an equally important topic. Thanks for your...